memorial either. Right.
Well, hello everyone. Want to welcome you to our July Tracker Family Call. It is so nice to see you all, and actually some faces we haven't seen before, so it feels like a big reunion. It's really lovely. So we always start our calls with an opening. It might be a prayer or a meditation type of thing. So I'm going to turn it over to Shaun Riddle.
Hey, it's good to see everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. Why don't you, if you can, just start to relax and start to check in with your body. Moving from your head down to your neck, shoulders, to your chest. Just observing down into your hips, your legs, your knees, calves, and then into your feet. Just feel where you are in space if you can. And then let's start to go inside. And let's go to that, that heart-centered place some of us know as the temples. And just gradually move towards that spot and connect with it. And as you feel that energy, start to move it out of that spot and out into the rest of your body. Start to feel that light permeate the rest of your body. And then when it reaches your skin, let it pause there for a moment. And then let it expand out past your skin and into the space that some of us know as radiance. And just hold it there for a bit. And then when you're ready, just make your way back to where we are right now.
Great, thank you, Shaun. That was lovely. What a wonderful way to come together. So our call tonight is entitled Advanced Go Bags. So I just want to remind people, I know I put it in the announcement, that we had done a previous call on go bags, and that one consisted of a panel of 4 people who shared what was in their go bags. So tonight is not focused on, duplicating that. So if that will be a benefit to you, the link was in the announcement, or you can just email me and I can easily forward that to you if you want to view that, because this now we're taking things the next step. And I hope everybody recognizes, I don't know how many people have said, oh yeah, I have some things for my go bag, but they're not actually in a bag, and I'm not actually sure what I have in there. And, but when we look at the state of the world right now, none of us know when we are going to have to instantaneously walk out our door to be protected our families, our pets, everything. So, having something ready to grab, having something in the car, if you're able to depart by vehicle, these preparations, we're at the time when the planning, we need to move beyond thinking about it and actually get the deed done. And we want to focus tonight on a couple aspects. I know in the announcement we said we were going to do medical and dental. And unfortunately, there was a little confusion with the dentist that we asked, Andres, and he has a very important family event that might not allow him to be here tonight. His daughter is turning 2 and they're having a birthday party. And if you don't think that's more important, then check your heart, because it just is. I did speak with him though, and if he's not able to make it tonight, if it is, it might be later, but if he's not, we'd already spoken with him about doing a full presentation on primitive dentistry, being prepared if you are not, in a place where it's accessible to have dental care. It's a lot more than what we have in our go bags. And if he's not able to make it tonight, he'll definitely do a piece on go bag specific things during that call. And actually, let me I backtrack to a couple housekeeping things. If everybody can take a moment and make sure you're muted at this point, so that we don't end up with interruptions from background noise, that would be really helpful. And also, this will be different the second half of the call, but while people are presenting, we ask that you hold the chat, any commenting in the chat, just because most people have not shut that off and it pops up and it can be very distracting to those listening and to those actually presenting. So yeah, staying muted, you're not chatting. If you have questions, if you can, hang on just a second. I'm gonna get that. There, I just muted the rest of you. Sorry, don't mean to be rude, but that way we don't have the background noise. So if you have a question, there will be a question and answer time. So just jot it down somewhere, but don't type it in. Plus, if a bunch of people are doing things, we lose the questions. They get way up the thing and it's hard to scroll and chat. So if you'll hold those until the end. So this first part, we wanted a couple perspectives. So you might hear duplicates, but both of our presenters on the medical are in the medical profession, and this is what they do. And they're both trackers, so they know what our needs are, what our skills are, and kind of what we're looking for. And again, just so you know, we're planning in the future to have a panel call completely on medical priorities for wilderness medical needs. So the questions our focus tonight is just on go bag, which means what do we want to have with us for the short term, things that we might need for medical emergencies or just medical needs. So I'm first going to introduce Shaun Riddle and let him take this over and speak about medical things, and then I'll introduce Alissa, and then after that we'll do a Q&A on both of them. Okay, so here we go. Shaun, you're on.
Hi. So what I'm going to do, I've found that as as my bags have evolved over time and they continue to change, that I just wanted to present a little bit at first before, just listing off a list of things that may or may not mean anything, kind of how I think about stuff, right? And my perspective is I'm looking at the first 1 to 3 months, right? Like, what are the things that are going to come up in those periods of time? And I would suggest that I know we've had a presentation on a couple of presentations on the game, and so I think probably everybody's kind of aware of that. But what I do is I think back to different classes that I've had And then I apply the game to that, right? And just wanted to highlight a couple things, as I was thinking about this. My advanced standard, at least, some of the issues that I saw come up was that, I mean, there was building those debris huts, there was a tremendous amount of increased physical activity. Um, and I know that I lost weight and others lost weight pretty rapidly despite having calories, right? And that might be an issue, even not even having the calories, right? Um, there was suboptimal sleep, there was problems with regulating body heat, there was hydration issues. I know that in several of the scout classes, I know that I froze. Did my audio continue? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. I know that in the scout class, I remember sort of trying to get in shape for scout, by doing running and that kind of thing. And then when I got there, I realized, to be in shape for scout, I would have had to have trained by just walking 8 hours a day. So it was a different type of stress than I was, physical stress than I was prepared for. And I saw that, we had people on our first day that left because of swelling, that kind of thing, so there's some lymphatic issues with being on your feet that whole time. um, I remember seeing after a couple of days people walking around without shoelaces in their shoes because their feet swelled so much that their shoes no longer fit, right? So blisters, sleep deprivation there for sure, hydration too. But another thing that I saw too that I didn't expect was eye injuries right at night. And so that's another concern just in those first 1 to 3 months, right? All of this to me leads to increased stress, right, on your body in all those different forms, um, which means increased cortisol release, which means decreased immune function, right? So we're going to be more susceptible to infections, right? More susceptible to breaks in the skin and cellulitis, gut problems, respiratory issues, right? So I also wanted to highlight, a lot of us, or just as a population, maybe not this group, but we're probably not in the best shape that we could be in, right? And in the first week, 6 weeks of exercise, when people quit, they mostly quit because of injuries, right? So we're gonna move from a place of where we're relatively sedentary to sort of a, tons and tons of activity, right? And I know that my functional strength probably isn't where it could be, right? So I'm thinking about things like sprains and strains, breaks, blisters, that kind of thing. Also wanted to just sort of highlight something I've seen is that when people go through rapid weight loss, and that's something that's probably going to happen with the added calorie output or the sort of caloric debt that we're going to have. Um, you know, people tend to go through a detox, right? We there's a term called xenobiotics, which is a term for chemicals that are not sort of like not natural, but we can absorb them. We take them in through our food, our water, that kind of a thing, and we store them. Most of them are fat soluble, so we store them in our fat cells. So something that happens when you lose a lot of fat quickly, when you lose a lot of weight quickly, is those stored chemicals get released into the bloodstream, and so you can have you know people don't feel good, right? And so I see fatigue and brain fog, mood changes, loss of motivation. you know um, Something to think about is just people who have a gallbladder history, right? You're going to be liberating a lot of fat soluble and fat that your body is going to have to process, and so there can be issues like diarrhea and dehydration due to that, right? I'll just give you an example. There's a an interesting clinic that I came across called True North in California that does water only fasting as an inpatient, and so you can go there and fast for 40 days. And in the first 1 to 2 weeks, they'll often have what they call a healing crisis, where people will, and this is part of why they have them inpatient too, is that people will, they'll have all kinds of crazy reactions just because their body's trying to purge and they're having a tough time doing that. right, in such a fast way. And I think that's something that we're going to experience. So anyway, just to be aware of that kind of a thing. Um, I'll just say this too. To me, it's just a note about medication, because I'm going to talk about medication here in a second. Is that I really think the drastic body changes are going to happen in those first 3 months. And, whether it's our change in our diet or increased activity, sleep, sun exposure, that kind of thing. And my bet is that a lot of chronic issues are going to start to fade during that time. And so my thought is, I'm going to give you like I'd like to see people, or I'd like to, what I do is I plan for a 3-month medication supply, right, in the go bags. Um, so things like hypertension, type 2 diabetes, right? There's chances those will start to just gradually, your need for medication might start to wean, right? I'll also say too, you want to know your methods, as much as you can, right? You want to be able to avoid allergies, to certain antibiotics, to latex, stuff like that. Know their health history if you can, if at all possible, right? Do they have any kind of weak areas or susceptibilities? There are people who tend to get ear infections or kidney, urinary tract infections, asthma, bronchitis, that kind of stuff, seasonal allergies. I think that's going to help you prepare a little bit better. And then I would say for anything like that, do your research, see if you can figure out what are both the conventional and the natural ways you could work with those conditions. I'd also say know the dangers in your area. Know the the animals and insects. You guys have snakes that you're going to have to contend with, poisonous snakes. Um, you know, just as an example, in the South, right, up until recently, there was a huge epidemic of hookworm, right, and that would transmit through your bare feet in mud puddles, that kind of thing. And we think of hookworm as being something in the past, and I would say it probably is in terms of the population, but most of the population isn't running around barefoot in the in the dirt, right? So that might be a consideration in the future, because I doubt that hookworm is gone, type of thing. Know your temperatures, those kinds of things. You just got to know your environment as best as you can. Other items that are not sort of first aid directly related, they're not on my first aid pack, but I would suggest you think about is maybe work gloves, right? And that's just trying to avoid as much as you can cuts and scrapes, right? Especially with knife use. And just remembering, like I was writing in my journal this morning, and after about 15 minutes, I just noticed that my writing just didn't, like, it was starting to get sort of like squiggly and that kind of thing. And I started to realize, like, I don't write like I did when I was in high school, right? Everything's typed now, right? And so just our hand strength, is I think a lot less than it has been. So working with knives and that kind of thing, we're going to be shifting into a period where we're going to be doing that. And just preemptively, using gloves at first might be a really good thing to think about in terms of avoiding those cuts, right? That could become a big deal, or splinters or that kind of thing. I can remember a kid I grew up with telling me his granddad died from a splinter, right? So we don't think about that these days, but so work gloves, I think clear glasses, that was what I took away from Scout, to wear at night, right? And who would have thought, right? But going through the bush, people in front of you, letting go of branches that they've moved aside, you get whipped in the face, or things that you're not able to see, right? You just don't want those poking in your eye. Um, Sock liners, I'm going to say blisters are sort of a big deal, and I don't see sock liners that much anymore, right? We used to have them at I used to work at an outfitter, for about 8 or 9 years, right, in my college and graduate school days, and we all had sock liners, but I don't see those anymore. I think those are, preemptive for preventing blisters. um, let's see. And then I would say figure out your footwear too, like break them in, figure out what you need. Um, I've noticed some of I was laid up with some complications from surgery 2 years ago for about 6 months, and I didn't wear shoes for 6 months. And I realized I couldn't fit into my regular shoe, my regular shoes. I had to buy new shoes that are bigger. And now I can't wear, like I need that space, right? And just thinking back to the scout and the swelling that me and other people experienced, right? I would figure that footwear stuff out before it's time to go to hit the trail. Um, so the conditions I'm thinking of that I feel like I can handle in the wilderness, like I'm not going to be able to handle a gunshot wound or something like that, right? Um, are breaks in the skin. Number one, I'm thinking about preventing or treating cellulitis, right? Blisters, sprains and strains, dehydration, diarrhea, water loss, that kind of thing, right? Heat stroke, that kind of thing. So the contents, soap is kind of a big one, right? And maybe it's apparent to everyone else, but it really wasn't to me. And I still remember, the first sort of keepers class I took was called The Gathering. And our very first homework assignment was from Tom was learn how to make soap. And that's a huge deal, that hygiene component, right? So we want some soap. I've got some analgesics, some NSAIDs, some non-steroidal anti-inflammatories in my bag, some Tylenol, Motrin, those types of things, right, for pain relief. I want 3 months of medication for the my family members is what I keep. I also, a lot of us, including myself, right, in the go bag part, some of the food that I have is not food I'm used to. And so I've also put in a few packets of smooth move tea just in case I have issues or anyone else does, right? With such a drastic food change, right? Um, Moleskin, I use moleskin a lot when I'm, out hiking and that kind of a thing. I think it's super important. Electrolytes, I use electrolyte packets. I kind of feel like water is great, but we need to hold that water, right? And water is a polar molecule, right? It's got charge, and so do minerals, right? Electrolytes. And so to hold that water, I think we need those electrolytes. So I think those electrolyte powders are a really good thing to look into. I've got butterfly strips. I'm not really interested in doing any kind of suturing, although I mean I do, I've done that in practice, but I'm not interested in doing that in the field. And I think the butterflies are great. There's even for wound closures, there's super glue, right? So that might be something that you want to think about putting in there. And I would also suggest that before this would be something to look into and to maybe take some coursework on, but I wouldn't be quick to the draw on closing cuts, right? Wanting to close cuts necessarily, right? What you don't want to do is close a cut with stuff in it, type of thing, right? And that stuff might be microscopic that you can't see, right? So I've sort of moved away from that, the whole suture kind of situation. Neosporin, I've got some of that in there. I carry an EpiPen, and those I don't have anyone in my family that has allergies that we know of yet. Not everyone's been stung by a bee yet. My 5-year-old still hasn't, so I don't know that, right? I carry some Benadryl, right? The only issue to think about with regards to the Benadryl is the drowsiness. So you want to think about that. I also carry some of those gel packets of Reactin and Claritin. I've got a couple of folks in my little group that have allergies. Tape of different sizes, right? Back to the allergies, there are people who have trouble with adhesive, right? In on band-aids and that kind of thing. So you'll want to know that because there's different types of tape that you can get. There's a paper tape, although it doesn't hold that well, tends to be less reactive for folks. And there's a, I have a couple sizes of tape, right? There's a thinner tape that's used a lot. I mean, you could certainly rip the other tape down the middle to get it thinner, but there is thinner tape that you can get now. It's very popular in grappling and that kind of thing. So it's available pretty easily. I like finger cots too. So if you've got a little, and I don't know if if people sort of know what I'm talking about, but this is almost like a mini condom that you would roll onto a fingertip that's got a cut, let's say, so that you could go ahead and work with that, despite having that. Of course, band-aids of various sizes, some gauze, a tourniquet, learn how to use a tourniquet. There's a ton of YouTube videos on that. And even glucose packs, right? Now, some people, again, this comes back to knowing who you're with, or as best as you can. But there are going to be people who have trouble with hypoglycemia, right, more than others. And so those glucose packs can be very helpful. I have a magnifying lens, and then I also carry these glasses I'm wearing are reading glasses. So my eyes have gotten to the point where I need that. And so I've gone out to like Home Depot and bought the 3 or 4 packs of reading glasses, and I've got them stuffed in my bag everywhere. And this is one of the places I have one pair stuffed, right? Just something on those glasses is or at least the cheap ones that I that I get. I need to screw those screws in every once in a while. So I also have a little screwdriver too for that. Um, Blades, and you can find these scalpel blades in a lot of different places these days. There's even knives that are built upon being replaceable scalpel blades. um, I like to have some tools, and this is where I sort of don't skimp on the tools, and that would be things like tweezers, like a clamp or a hemostat, scissors. And where I've gotten them is, you can if you go to a sporting goods store and you get into the fly fishing aisle or the fly fishing section, they often have very good quality sort of tools that they're using for cutting line and stuff like that, or maybe even making lures, right? But you can get some really nice fine stuff, right? There. uh, I carry a bandana, and actually carry 2 in that kit, for splinting or turning it into a sling, a shoulder sling, that kind of thing. I also carry activated charcoal, a little bit of that. I don't carry a ton of that, but for a lot of people that'll help out with some, almost like a food poisoning kind of a situation, or a colicky kind of situation. Even a looser stool type of situation, when someone's starting to lose water. And I'm not, from my perspective, because I come from a more natural perspective, I'm not as concerned with, my particular bent is that when you getting into diarrhea, your body's trying to get rid of something, right? So, but being out right in the wilderness, that's the issue, is the water loss and the electrolyte loss, right? So we don't want that to go on too long. And I also carry a little bit of aloe, right, for burns and that kind of thing. I have access to it, and if you did want access to it, it's getting a little bit tougher to get medication, but you can't. It's still available, right? And this may be getting into the details of this. Might be something we do at a later time, but I just wanted to mention I keep some Keflex. The other name for it is cephalexin, and that's a cellulitis treatment. So I'm thinking about that with cuts and splinters or blisters that are broken open, that kind of thing. Anything that where a bug can get in, right? Um, I I have one of my kids has troubles with recurring ear infections, and so I carry some amoxicillin for that. In terms of sort of traveler's diarrhea, the number one, well, I'll just say the go-to that I see most often is Flagyl, or it's also called metronidazole. So I carry some of that. Um, and there's a couple of others that I won't necessarily go into. They sort of, they may not be accessible. Um, I'll also say just a couple of things, right? I've started using a chest pack as well, right? And the thought there for me is, if for some reason I got separated from my pack, I'm not going through when I'm out, right? I'm not going through the hassle of taking off a chest pack like I would a backpack. And so for me, it just sort of seems like if I have to get out of there and I have to leave my pack, I still have that on my body. So that's a consideration to think about, with what you pack and keeping it close, right? Type of thing. Um, I also keep things organized in these small pouches that I just wrote down as Maxpedition pouches, but there are there's other brands that you can get. Um, but I've got like a zip up pack like that for, just something, that big, that I have for fire making tools. I have some for first aid, that kind of thing, right? Um, and then I'll also say, do we have a little bit more time, Debbie? I have a little bit more I could go over, but I could stop here too. I can't hear you. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, go ahead. I think,
Okay.
like I said, we're just gonna go with the flow tonight.
Cool. Cool. Okay, so I've got a little section that I just entitled "Softening the Blow," and really, it's just things that I'm thinking of that might help us, so that the accidents or the things that we encounter in terms of health kinds of things are less than they would be, maybe, right? Um, I'll say, probably everyone knows these already, but learn the plants that provide vitamin C, right? um, Learn the plants that provide minerals and hydration, right? Vitamin C is a lot of the pines, right? Um, I carry, and some people may be offended by this, and I don't mean that, but I carry a bottle. I have every member of my family has a bottle of desiccated organ meats in capsules. And the reason for that is it's a super concentrated form of vitamins and minerals in there. And so those are things that I'm going to be having them do in those first, month or two, while the stress is the greatest, right? On both physically and mentally, right? Um, I'd say, you know, for a lot of at least the medicine that I'm involved in, the natural medicine, there's been a huge focus on on our microbiome, right? And I'm sure everyone's heard about these studies that have been done with the Hadza, right? And if you haven't, there's researchers that are following around the Hadza, and they're picking up their poop, and they're running microbiome assays on it because they want to know what kind of bugs live in their body. And these are about the closest that we're able to contact with as a hunter gatherer, right? And what we're finding is that the biodiversity is crazy. It's like we've lost, just in the West, we've lost that biodiversity, you know, and they seem to be very, like, just matched to their environment, super suited to their environment, very healthy, right? And something that's kind of interesting that I think will happen, right, is that when the researchers start adopting the Hadza diet while they're studying, their microbiome changes, right? It starts to approximate the microbiome of the Hadza, right? So there's some hope there, right? For sure. But you know, leading up to it, there are things that we can do, right? So there are several bacteria that we've lost um, that the Hadza have, right? And there's a there's a book people might want to check out called Super Gut by a guy named William Davis, and he goes into that in great detail. Um, and his sort of plan with it, it's kind of cool, is he's having people make these yogurt ferments, right, of these different probiotics. And basically, essentially what he's doing is he's amplifying, right? So you can take a probiotic at 10 million colony forming units and turn it into, in 36 hours, into 300 billion, right? And and you can buy probiotics that are that high, but they're super, super expensive, right? And I just wanted to highlight one that was kind of interesting. There's a study of older mice fed the Lactobacillus casei, or Shirota strain, and that comes from a Korean product called Yakult, which is like a little yogurt, kind of almost like a kefir that you can get at Walmart, and and they decreased their upper respiratory infections by 50%, and also decreased. So they also saw that the older mice that they were studying, their thymuses regrew, which is a gland that's helping part of your immune system called the T cell immune system, right? So there's some things like that we could do now, right? We could start making our own yogurts and kind of getting in, like sort of in preparation, right? Because I know that one of the things that Tom warned us about was another pandemic, right? There's a great podcast. I'm gonna put it on this list that I'll send to Debbie, so hopefully everyone who wants it can get it. It's a podcast called Better Health Guy, and the episodes are 213 and 214 with the author of the book. And then if I'll give the recipes as well to Debbie. And so if you do want to play with those, you can. The last thing I'll say, there's a great, well, I haven't listened to the podcast in a while, but it is a podcast called Doom and Bloom. And it's a doctor, a retired doctor, and his nurse practitioner wife, who do it together. And they're focused on sort of, what we are, but I think they're more focused on sort of sedentary end of times kind of a situation, right? But he's written some great books. There's a book on antibiotics that I think is great. In fact, it was just so simple to use and straightforward that that's what I used in the last few years of my practice when I needed to reference an antibiotic. So he's got some great resources on their website. It's called doomandbloom.net. So there's books, there's all kinds of stuff. And I think there's still an active podcast, although I haven't listened to it in a while. So I think that's it for me. Until questions, Debbie.
Great. Thank you so much, Shaun.
Yep, no
yeah,
problem.
I really appreciate the perspective you brought to that too. So, Alissa, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's all yours.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alissa Barnes, and just to give you a little bit of background, I've been an emergency room nurse for the last 25 years of my life. I've also trained a lot with advanced wilderness life support and taking classes out in the wilderness, looking at different problems that would arise and what we could do and what we could use from our bags, medical bags, and also what we can make from the wilderness. And then I've studied with Tracker School since 2001. One of the big things I really appreciate Shaun for is bringing perspective to this, because I did want to mention that know your environment, be aware of your environment, and start a list of some of the greatest hazards in your environment that you may be encountering, and you get to pack your go bag, your medical go bag, for those environments that you plan on encountering. There's no sense for you to pack something for the Pacific Northwest if you live in the desert in the Southwest and you don't plan on making it that far. By the time you get there, you'll probably have exhausted everything in your bag. And so know your environment and think about the hazards there. And then also one of my pet peeves is watching people pull stuff out of their bags that's still in its same packaging that they bought it in. They've never spent any dirt time with it. And my personal experience is that if you haven't trained in something and you don't know how to use something, the first time you use it shouldn't be when your life or the life of your loved ones is on the line. So please take classes. There are multiple classes, there's trainings, all kinds of ways of which you can learn how to do first aid. So as I was contemplating this, I came up with 11 topics and categories that I would have in my go bag, and these are in general. So I'm going to go through them and give you a list of supplies for that particular problem, because that's how my brain works in that way of organization. So the very first one that Shaun also mentioned is blisters. Blisters on your feet, blisters on your hands, that can be an extreme mobility problem really fast. So for that, leather gloves, moleskin, duct tape, so that you can put duct tape on those high abrasion areas, tweezers, a needle and thread or dental floss can also substitute for thread for keeping those blisters open. The second on my list is dehydration. And dehydration is a really broad spectrum, but essentially what that means is your body is losing fluid through sweating, through vomiting, through diarrhea. So I just have a lot of different things for that. I have Imodium is used to stop diarrhea. Peppermint oil is used for nausea. I also have a Camelback or an enema bag for times where you would need to use, you basically would take your enema bag here and you can infuse up to 2 liters in the rectum of someone or yourself. You can even use your Camel bag. You just cut the end off and put it where it needs to go. To rehydrate yourself in those times where you might be in the desert, and it's the difference between life and death where you're that extremely dehydrated. I also have electrolyte tabs on my list. I really enjoy just a capsule like these. They're called Endurolites Extreme from Hammer Nutrition. I carry these and I've used these multiple times. So again, I have dirt time with the stuff that goes in my go bag. I use it and I try it out and I see how I like it. So like, oh, here, you're dehydrated here, try some of these. Oh, here, you're cramping, try some of these. So there's that. And then I also carry salt in a leak-proof container. I also have water purification capabilities. And I have a water container and activated charcoal under dehydration. Next subtitle is infections. Infections, dun, dun, dun. That's a big one. We're talking about any kind of infections. That is where a virus, a bacteria, mostly bacteria, is going to invade any part of your body. Most of the time it's going to be your skin, or it's going to get into your gastrointestinal system. So for that, I have antibiotics. I carry doxycycline, Keflex, Bactrim, amoxicillin, penicillin, Flagyl, Cipro, and also vitamin C and thiamine, because those two working together have been shown to bring people back from end-stage sepsis in the hospital. Used it on myself multiple times and found it to be extremely helpful. I also carry beeswax for making salves on the go in a leak-proof container, and then antibiotic ointment, then like a tube of Neosporin. The cool thing about that is that you can use that to start fires. Everything that goes in your bag should have multiple uses. And then essential oils of lemon and oregano. The next subtitle is burns, lacerations, and wounds. Another big title. However, for those, for what I have, is I have suture materials, and I know how to suture. So if you don't know how to suture, it might be something that you can buy on Amazon. There's these cool kits that teach you how to suture. And again, if you're going to suture up a wound, like Shaun mentioned, you got to be very conscious of what you're suturing up inside of you. So washing it out extremely well is going to be key. And I have a bottle of hydrogen peroxide in a leak-proof container, as well as a bottle of alcohol in a leak-proof container. And those diluted with water will clean out pretty much anything. They're bactericidal and bacteriostatic. Also have eye wash, duct tape, an ACE wrap, an Israeli bandage. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with an Israeli bandage, it's basically a vacuum sealed bandage that's like an ACE wrap. It's just usually 6 inches in diameter, and it helps to put pressure over and compress a wound that might be bleeding, and they're excellent to have. So invaluable tool for that. And I also have gauze. The cool thing about this gauze right here is they have compressed gauze. This is super, super small, but this is 4.1 yards of gauze that's vacuum sealed into this cute little pack. So if you're thinking about space in your bag, think outside the box and think about how you want to, how it's packaged, but it works really great. The other thing that I have there on my list is tampons. Tampons are excellent for packing wounds. They're also excellent for packing nasal bleeds. And they just go right up there. And it helps to compress the artery that's bleeding, especially if you're on any blood thinners. That's something you need to think about, is that sometimes if people look at you the wrong way, if you get accidentally knocked in the face or nose, you can actually die from a nosebleed. And I also have non-stick dressings for your true burns. Putting gauze on a burn can sometimes be extremely painful, because what's going to happen is your body is going to start healing and it's going to pull that gauze into it. And then when you go to change the gauze, you're going to be ripping off flesh. So having a true non-stick dressing is key, as well as I also carry some silver sulfidine cream. Silver is the oldest known antibiotic that we have in history. And it is an incredible thing that they have done, is they have put silver in this little cream here. And I believe you can buy that over the counter. It's a cool, because it's almost like a silver white paste that comes out. A little bit goes a long ways in a burn, but it actually helps to keep it from becoming infected, which is one of the key things with burns, is infection and fluid loss with that. Next subtitle is fractures. God forbid it happens and we fall and we break something. I have in my go bag what's called a SAM splint. A SAM splint is a prefabricated splint. They come in multiple different sizes. They fold up super small. And you can literally whip it out, and with an ACE wrap, or you can also use your Israeli bandage. It has several uses. You can wrap up and splint whatever extremity is the problem. I like this one because it can work as a cervical collar. It can also work as an arm board for your arm and your wrist, which is the most common, or it can also work for your leg. As you can see, it kind of wraps around both sides of the ankle, and you can either tape it or put it in place. So these work amazing. I also have a cravat, triangular dressing. I keep 4 of those in my go bag because it acts like a sling. You can make a sling. You can also use cravats to tie these together as well. And they can also work as gauze and bandages. That's what they used in a lot of the civil wars. And it's long enough, so it's usually pretty wide. It's almost like the span of your arms outstretched, and then it comes together as a V. So it's called a cravat, a triangular dressing. Also have an ACE wrap, a knife, and a multi-tool for fractures. There's so many instances where having a good knife and knowing how to use a good knife is absolutely key. So whatever knife you carry, make sure that you have the capability of putting it in the fire to cauterize a wound. The next topic I have is bleeding. Bleeding, I carry a tourniquet. If you're going to carry a tourniquet, make sure that you know how to use it, and not just how to use it, but how to tell someone how to use it, as well as how to put it on with just one arm. So imagine that you just have a crush injury, maybe a boulder fell in your arm, and you don't have use of your right arm. Can you put a tourniquet on with just one arm? And practice doing it. Again, dirt time, dirt time, dirt time. I cannot preach that enough with all of the stuff that goes in your go bag, especially your medical supplies, because when you're hurt and you're in pain, you're not really thinking clearly. A lot of things are going through your mind. And the last thing you want to do is be like, I've never trained this. I don't know what to do. It's so stressful. So I also have gauze. Again, this is the gauze that I use for that. So again, every one of these topics, you're going to notice a lot of overlap. But this can be used for multiple different things. And again, it can be used to pack a wound, which is why I love this so much. It is essentially, as well as a tampon, can also be used to pack a wound as well. You have your Israeli bandage, and then a knife to cauterize your wound, or a lighter. I like a quick way to make a fire, right? For those of you that are masters in every single possible environment, making a quick hand drill, bow drill, or whatever primitive fire by friction, try doing that hurt. Try doing that in pain. Try doing that when your family or your loved one or your little kid is screaming your name. And you're going to want to carry something that you can make fire with super fast to be able to use that to cauterize. The next subtitle I have is frostbite. For those of you that live in cold, it is a thing. So I have emergency blanket, a container that you can heat water in so that you can just put it right on the fire and heat up water. Again, I have a way to make fire. Heat packs if you're on the move. If you can stay sedentary, that is the best way to deal with frostbite, is water, warm water, not hot water. But if you need to be on the move, then heat packs. You can heat up rocks. However, you never want to put anything directly on a frostbit area, whether it's your hands or your feet, which is the most likely place for it to be. You want to slowly rewarm. So I have wool socks and wool gloves as part of that in my winter go bag for my medical kit. And you would think, oh, wool socks and wool gloves can be used for multiple different things, but it's also for frostbite as well, because if I were to rewarm, I wouldn't ever want to put the hot rock directly on my skin. I would want to have the wool glove on and then put the rock there as well. And then next subtitle is altitude, acute mountain sickness. I don't know how many of you have ever had this, but it is a legit pain to feel nauseous, fatigued, feel like you have a crushing headache. You start to feel really short of breath when you're climbing high mountains in high altitude. So some of the things that you can do to have in your bag for that, again, plan ahead, know your environment. If you live below sea level, this is not for you. But if you live in the high mountains, especially in Colorado, where you got your 14ers, here in California, we have high altitude as well. You're going to want NSAIDs. NSAIDs mean non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which are like Advil, ibuprofen, Aleve. You also want steroids. Steroids, I highly recommend prednisone as a steroid. Analgesics mean pain control. So again, your Tylenol, ibuprofen, if you have something better than that that's prescribed to you, then that can also go in your go bag. There's also a medication called Diamox. Diamox helps you to not metabolize oxygen as fast. So when you get higher in altitudes, you have less and less oxygen, which is what causes all of these symptoms. And so it acts almost like a bit of a diuretic as well, which means you get to stay super hydrated. So again, all your hydration stuff. And then they also make patches that you can put on your body that are made out of ginger, ginseng, lemon, clove, cinnamon, that can help as a natural remedy for altitude sickness. I also have peppermint oil that helps to relieve the nausea. Next subtitle is anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis means where you have a life-threatening reaction to a substance, whatever it may be. The most common is bee stings or hornets or wasps, and anything that's new in your environment. So for anaphylaxis, there are very few true natural remedies that are going to save your life or your children's life in the case that you are truly having a anaphylaxis allergic reaction. So I have Benadryl tablets, not liquid capsules. Liquid capsules will expire sooner than tablets do. So I was able to speak with one of our lead pharmacists, and he was saying that in general, if it's a tablet or in a tablet form and not in a liquid form, it will last for 5 years past its expiration date. It will be a little less potent, but for the most part, it'll still stay fairly good. So if you're planning on putting any medications in your go bags, try to put either powdered capsules or tablets and stay away from liquid. The other thing that I have in my go bag for anaphylaxis is a medication called ranitidine. Ranitidine you can buy over the counter, and in the emergency room, we give 300 milligrams to our patients, just a one-time dose orally. It is a histamine blocker, which helps, and it's a non-drowsy histamine blocker. We also use Pepcid and Zyrtec. The cool thing about Pepcid, Zyrtec, and ranitidine and Benadryl is you can take them all together. They each work at a different place in the histamine cascade, so they work really well in conjunction with each other. If you have the capability of carrying an EpiPen, I highly recommend carrying an EpiPen because nothing will stop an allergic reaction that's closing off your airway where you can't breathe faster than an EpiPen. Unfortunately, EpiPens expire pretty quickly because they are a liquid. So if you do have one in your go bag, anything you have in your go bag that could potentially expire, it's really good to have a list or a spreadsheet of what is in your go bag and when it expires. And every now and then, just once a month, every first Monday of the month, just make sure that you go through that and cycle through them. So if you know that something's going to be expiring soon, take it out and put a new one in. I also keep steroids. So prednisone, again, is my steroid of choice in there for allergic reactions. Natural remedies for anaphylaxis or allergic reactions. I'm just going to say allergic reactions. Anaphylaxis, I'm not so sure about. Because once your airway is closing off, it's closing off, and you need something that works very fast. So quercetin, stinging nettle, and vitamin C are the kind of the top ones for that you can keep in your go bag if you like to do something a little bit more natural. But as for your airway closing off, I don't mess around with that, and I always keep those medications in my go bag. Just note that you can have a secondary, more severe anaphylactic reaction once those medications wear off. So it's really good that you have at least another dose on hand. So instead of just having a dose, I would have several doses, because oftentimes if your body is truly reacting to something, you want to have more than one dose. And then the next subheading that I have is a poisonous snake bite. So for me, I live in California, and our poisonous snake is a hematologic toxic rattlesnake, which means when the snake bites you and injects venom with the bite, it causes your blood to thin, almost like rat poison would do. If you were to feed it to rats, it basically causes your entire body and insides to bleed out. So one of the things that we have been taught to do is to keep still. The faster you're moving, the faster that heart is pumping, the faster that poison gets spread through your body. You want to immobilize that area if possible. Remove any tight clothing and jewelry. Don't use a tourniquet. Don't try sucking out the poison. You want to stay well hydrated. Don't put ice on it. And then if you have the ability to take in foods high in vitamin K, that acts as almost like an antidote for how much it's thinning your blood. And then try to keep the bite below the level of the heart. This also brings into a good point of communication. So while we still have the ability to access medical care, it's really great to have a sat phone with you or some way that you can call in a higher level of medical care. If and when there is no access to a higher level of medical care, doing the things that I just mentioned for snake bites have saved multiple lives in the field. Also, Benadryl helps with our histamine response. If you have a dog with you and a dog gets bit by a rattlesnake, giving them Benadryl is what the vet has recommended as well. So if you're going to carry Benadryl, carry enough for your pets as well. Last but not least, on my list is insects, parasites, and spirochetes. Those are a big issue right now in our world, and they have been for a while, and they're just now starting to become more publicized. We've got billboards on our freeways and highways and signs in our parks talking about spirochetes. And when I say spirochetes, I mean Lyme disease, Babesia, all of the tick-borne illnesses are considered spirochetes. And mosquitoes. Mosquitoes can carry some of the worst diseases. And being bit by mosquitoes, right now we have reports of malaria growing further and further and further and further north. And Babesia is also called northern malaria. It acts just like malaria. It attacks your red blood cells, and it has very similar, if not mimics perfectly, malaria. And then you can get that from a tick bite as well. So things that I keep in my go bag to combat these are mosquito netting. I keep DEET, and I don't keep the spray. I keep the cream. And it has an applicator, so I buy the one that has an applicator on the end. That's kind of a sponge. And I put that on my wrists, both wrists, all around my wrists. I put it around my neck, and I put it around my ankles. And then I also duct tape my clothing around my wrists and my ankles, and any other, and I tuck my shirt in. So the only way, so really, if I'm in tick area, they have no way of biting my skin. The other thing I have is a leak-proof bottle of permethrin. Permethrin is what you can use. The cheapest way to do this is go to a livestock store, and it's concentrated. So I carry concentrated with me. You would want to dilute that with other water. It is neurotoxic to cats, so if you are spraying this anywhere near cats, just be aware of that. You also want to put it on your clothing when it is not windy outside, gusts of wind. You don't want to be inhaling any of this stuff when you're putting it on. But that is a way of killing and preventing the potential infection to begin with. The other thing that I have done in the past that's worked really well is I've taken vitamin B12 before I know I go to an area that is high mosquito and high tick area. It makes my skin pretty much untastable to the mosquitoes and the ticks. I also carry doxycycline. and ivermectin for potential of malaria, since it is coming farther and farther north. It's not just a jungle thing anymore. So again, know your area, know your hazards, know what things you may potentially be in contact with and how to prevent them. The other thing is parasites. Parasites are in water big time. You don't see them, you never know they're there. They're extremely hard to sense. Unless you've taken multiple times where you've taken water that has absolutely zero parasites and then checked the presence of water that has parasites and felt the difference, and you just dirt time that until you can't get it wrong. It's very difficult to know when the parasites are going to be in uncooked meat, if you're not cooking your food all the way, if you're eating plants that certain animals have urinated on, as well as just ingesting water. So making sure that you have water purification capabilities. And there is multiple different tinctures out there that you can carry that deal with parasites that are nice and natural. They're usually very bitter, and they usually make you very sick if you take too much too fast. So it's a ramping up dose of that. But again, everything that you have in your go bag, in your medical go bag, you should rep. So I'm not saying go out there and get sick, but make sure that you know what you're doing. And one of the things that I've felt has supported me in the past is if I'm learning a new skill, I will write down the steps in simple 2-year-old, easy to understand, plain English, and I will laminate it and I'll make it as small as possible. And I will put that where with whatever skill it is. If I'm learning a new skill, new plant, new medicine, new way, a new procedure, so that in case I forget, then I have that easily accessible to me as a reminder. And that is it.
Great. Thank you so much, Alissa. Okay, folks. So we now will have some time for question and answer. And Andres is here. So after that, I think we'll do the medical questions since they might be different than what we'd have for dental. So two things you can do. It's easiest if you move your little mouse, you'll see the little row below. There's a thing called with a heart that says react. And if you click on that, there's a way to raise your hand, and it just does a little electronic hand raise. So if you have a question, you can put your hand up, or you can type it into the chat. Or, you know, if you're just not tech savvy and you're like, I just unmute yourself and, you know, when nobody's talking, ask you, say you want to ask a question. Okay, Aaron, you have a question.
I have a lot of questions, and so I'm going to simplify it by asking Shaun. He mentioned that he had a handout because there were a lot of words he said that I have no way in heck to learn how to spell, and I'd like to research some of those medical things further. So was that going to be on the handout as well, is my big question. Otherwise, I have a lot of questions.
Yes, I'm going to send that to Debbie, my outline.
Okay. And then if I don't see the questions that I had answered on that, can I email you?
Of course.
Okay, great. But one that I just really am curious about is desiccated something.
Desiccated organ meats.
Desiccated organ meats. Okay.
So one of the things I'm worried about with my family is just going from a sort of like a nutrient-rich environment to one that's not, right? Or at least not where we're on the move and we're not able to process the local foods that we find, right, to get the most out of them. And so I started thinking to myself, like, you know, at first, years ago, I was storing multivitamins, right? To take with me. And I was talking to another tracker friend of mine, I'm in Montana now, but I lived in northern Alberta for a while. And I was saying to him, I was like, just hit me one day that, like, I was like, there are no plants here. Like, how are these natives able to accumulate nutrients, right? When the plants come, they're only there for a couple of months, right? And he was like, man, they go right after the organs first, right? That's the first thing that they do. And so that's how it started for me. And now now that seems to be the most sort of like I don't know, convenient, like concentrated thing that I can come up with at this point, right? And there are lots of different companies that have those kinds of things, right? What I get is I have a combination, and it's got like heart, kidney, liver, stuff like that, right?
Thank you. I appreciate the extra. And then I have a quick question, I hope, for Alissa. In category 3, infections, you mentioned vitamin C and now I'm starting to think I need hearing aids because I didn't catch vitamin C and what was it that you said were really helpful?
Okay, so vitamin C and thiamine. Thiamine is a B vitamin that is fat soluble. And so what they found is that vitamin C is an amazing antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal. It's really fantastic. But thiamine actually helps drive it into your cells where it's needed and where it works. So when taken together, and again, vitamin C is water soluble, so you take that with a large glass of water, preferably, and thiamine with a good fat like avocado, coconut oil, some other fat that helps to break it down. Otherwise, you just pee it straight out. So when you take those two together, it acts like an extremely powerful antiviral, antibiotic, antifungal.
Okay, I think Clementine spelt it. Is that how it's spelled in the chat? Can you see that?
It has an E on the end. There it is. Thank
Great.
you, Shaun.
Thank you. Thank you both. Lots of information. Really cool.
I also quickly wanted to address a question in the chat regarding antibiotics. So it is possible to get antibiotics, rarely from your doctor, rarely from your primary care physician, because they are kind of shying away from that. However, there is a lot of places that essentially it's very similar antibiotics that animals use. Dogs, cats, horses, cows, fish is a fantastic one. They're called slightly different names, but they're the exact same thing. So one of the things that I have done is one of my ER doctors recommended this book. Here, now you guys can see it. No? A little bit closer. I'll just say it's Tarascon Pocket Pharmacopoeia. So essentially what this book is this is what my ER doctor carries in his pocket. And this book goes through and lists all of the antibiotics and what they're good for, and the dosing for pediatrics, neonates, all the way up to elderly, because oftentimes the dosing is going to be very different, which is very nice. That way you don't have to memorize everything. But this book is invaluable, and I just keep it in my go bag because I can't keep all of that information in my head. So if you're able to, and you can also go down to Mexico, pretty much anywhere in South America, you do not need a prescription for most drugs. You can walk into the pharmacy and walk out with pretty much anything you want to buy. Prednisone, antibiotics, anti-nausea medication. Yeah, so they are acquirable. You just need to know where to look.
Okay, there was sorry, I'm late on getting this. There were some other questions. See, I hate scrolling, man, because why you can't just scroll incrementally? It does huge jumps. Okay, there was, I think it was Chris. I can't see because it's covered, but how about potassium iodide radiation pills for radiation fallout? Either of you have thoughts on that?
I have mixed feelings about that. I think it would be more helpful to have a Geiger counter and just not be there. Remove yourself from the area, if at all possible. But as far as that is concerned, I know that they've done a lot with kelp. Can be a natural source of that. If you're going to be like, let's say that you live right next to a potential for that collapse, then having that in your go bag would be great. But if you don't live anywhere where that is a potential problem, then having it in your bag isn't necessary, as long as you know how to remove yourself from that area, as well as know your wind patterns. And because a lot of that radiation can be carried on the wind. So that was one of the big things that Tom talked about is safe areas are safe based off of the wind and what the wind is carrying. Hope that makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions? And I know you probably have a million, but you know, we do have certain time constraints. So, you know, hopefully, like I said, these guys will be doing some more presenting on a broader spectrum, although they did a fantastic job of making a pretty broad spectrum this time. And but I do see one more question from Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
Just sorry, just a quick question about the vitamin Alissa mentioned for making your skin unpalatable to mosquitoes.
So vitamin B complex. And that's actually something Tom Brown Jr. recommended as something that he's had done in the past. And I have done that multiple times going out to the Pine Barrens, and it does work really well. I usually have to start taking it about a month before I plan on being in an area that is pretty infested with mosquitoes or ticks.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And there are questions that have come up in the chat about getting handouts. I think both Shaun and Alissa plan to send, you know, some information that they presented on. You're also going to get a copy of the chat. So anything that's gone in there, because I noticed Shaun also shared another website for getting prescription or non-prescription, hopefully, items, but another source for medications.
So can I just jump in here real quick, Debbie?
You betcha.
So for that, up until recently, and I haven't checked, but I got most of my stuff from a place called Fish Mox Fishplex. And these were fish-based. And the idea behind those is that, you know, like you can get horse ivermectin, for instance, but it's going to have stuff in it that you may not want to ingest, right? But the fish-based antibiotics have to go into water, right? They can't have that. Now that just shut down. So I think they're tightening up with stuff like that. The one I sent is called Reliable RX Pharmacy. Now, I think it's probably being shipped to from China, but most of our drugs are anyway. It'll take about 6 weeks to get there. That's a source of ivermectin. That's a sort of source of nitazoxanide. Some other things. I haven't gotten antibiotics there before. I haven't seen them there before. Basically, when you go through and you purchase, it's going to ask you to upload a prescription. And I just forward through that and don't order the prescription, and it shows up in 6 weeks. So there are some, not everything, right, that we've talked about, especially the antibiotics, are not on that site, but things like ivermectin and some other antiparasitics are there for sure. And I'll do some looking around. I haven't, I sort of shored up my supply, and so I haven't really looked recently. But maybe there are other places out there online you can get the antibiotics. We'll just have to see.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both so much. Man, great information. And now we're going to continue with some great information. Andre, are you ready to present, sir?
Yes, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
You see me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks so much for the medical team for that awesome presentation. Lots of good info. I'll have to rewatch and take better notes. And so my name is Andres, and I'm just going to do a pretty brief, maybe like 5-minute section here on dental. And a quick introduction about me. I took my standard class at Tracker School back in 2005, about 20 years ago. In 2017, and I was about 20 years old when I did that. And in 2017, I got my Doctor of Dental Surgery at the DDS. So I've been a dentist for about 8 years now, professionally. Recently, I shifted over to mainly treating kids. I'm a general dentist who mostly treats kids, but I've been treating adults for quite a bit, and I was an Army dentist for the early part of my career. And I'm 39 now, turning 40 in August. I love Tracker School, the physical and spiritual skills. I super love them. I love go bags. Primitive go bags is kind of like the way I'm trying to roll. So suddenly I got word that, people were interested in a dental go bag. And I was like, what? Of all the things I thought I would maybe be presenting on in one of these Tracker family calls, I did not suspect that something dental related was going to be what I would talk about, but here I am. So it was kind of a cool surprise. And the reason why I was, I don't know, taken aback by the thought of such a presentation is because dentistry, at least from my point of view, it's so materials heavy. It's so materials heavy. And there's so much going on with doing a dental procedure in terms of armamentarium and tools and need for facilities. And so when I compare that to the go bag, I was like, there's no way. But so then I decided to, Siobhan asked me to just, keep it simple. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me just zoom out a bit and give good advice as best I can. And just kind of keep it simple with this dental go bag, if you will. So I'm going to look at it first from the standpoint of prevention of problems, because with our go bag, how long are we going to be using it for? We don't know. So we don't know if it's a 10-year go bag or if it's a 3-day go bag. It's just kind of like you got to go and use your go bag, and I don't know how long you'll be using it for. I call it my homeless person bag, where I just can have everything I need to just kind of live and hunt and be good. So it should have some medical and dental stuff in there. But prevention, I think, teeth in a survival scenario, I think we can all follow safely if we look at it as survivalists. Teeth are tools. They're tools. They're tools we're using and tools we got to protect. So think of it as like your knives, your rock, stone tools, all those things that are in your go bag. Your tools in your body and in your mouth are your teeth. We really got to protect them. So one good first piece of advice would be to stay current and healthy with dental visits now that you do have access to the facilities and to the dentists. Stay current, stay healthy, be well ahead of time before you need to run off with your go bag. If you have questionable teeth, either get rid of them or fix them soon. And that's pretty, blunt advice, but I mean it. It's just kind of like, I know that, the restorability of a tooth means that, like, how savable is it right now? How much more life can we really get out of it before it becomes a problem? And some teeth are less fixable than others. Some teeth are less restorable than others. They're kind of questionable. They have a poor prognosis. So if you need to get rid of some teeth, now is the time. Get rid of them before they become a problem for you. Or fix them. If they really are fixable and the dentist finds that, yes, they're very savable and fixable, go ahead and get on that sooner rather than later, because you don't want that ticking time bomb in your mouth to go off when you're running around with your go bag. you want it to be taken care of now ahead of time. Then the next part of my presentation is just a simple cautionary statement of be mindful of chewing like excessively hard things. So a lot of cracked teeth and broken teeth that I see honestly come from people like chewing popcorn, you know, like that kind of a thing. Or sometimes some people have like a bad habit of chewing ice. Probably a few of you on this call know that you chew ice for whatever reasons. And ice breaks many teeth. It's not food. Was never meant to be something that we chew in order to get nutrition out of. So we're really not designed to chew ice. And then when I think about the, you know, my learning of foraging, and I think of like the nuts and the tree nuts and just all the various other hard foods or wild game, and how sometimes we eat meat right off the bone. I know I love to. And like bite at the cartilage at the end of the bone and things like that. I know I love to. Really got to be cautious with that kind of stuff, because that is like what will break a tooth at the worst moment possible. And so is, yeah, especially like anything with nuts. Like I love eating a raw nut just as much as you do, but you really got to be careful and kind of at least cook some things or mash it down and make some flatbread out of it or something. And then finally, I do want to move over to the like a few items. If I were to think of just a few very minimum items related to dental that I would carry around in my go bag. It would start off with like a very small, soft bristled toothbrush. Emphasis on soft bristled. The hard bristles are really harsh on most people's gums and wear out the enamel on teeth. So soft bristled toothbrush is the way to go. I would definitely carry floss. Either a placker, which is like the little thing with the handle with the little Y at the end and the floss in between it. Either a floss placker or wax string floss. If you're thinking about using the wax string floss for things like trapping or fishing line, I would probably get some non-scented wax string floss. And you know, that's all very lightweight and small and very easy to carry. Floss does prevent cavities in between the teeth. It also helps, like if you got some food jammed in between your teeth, like you would get it out. So it can be very, very useful, not to mention for sewing and other things like that. And then in my go bag, I mean, I do carry a toothbrush, I do carry floss, I do carry toothpaste in my go bag. So don't forget your toothpaste. You could, you know, activated charcoal is another option for that. All we're really looking for is to change the pH of the mouth, to change it from a low pH of something kind of acidic down in like the 3.5, 4.5 kind of area. That's when cavities start to happen. So if we can elevate the pH up to more neutral pH around 7 or slightly higher than 7, then we can keep the mouth cavity free and more likely problem free. So activated charcoal does that. And again, that's just like the black used up charcoal that could be pulverized. And then, yeah, just kind of add some water and use a toothbrush to brush all your teeth with. And so that's kind of acts like a natural toothpaste. I don't know all the ins and outs of natural, wild medicinals as far as the mouth goes. That's something for me to do and present on in the future. And then I think it's wise to carry a few, you know, NSAIDs, like the medical team said, just related to if you do start to have some sort of dental discomfort while you're in the field with your go bag. So Tylenol or ibuprofen. Tylenol is not an NSAID, but yeah, like ibuprofen or Tylenol. There's something out there called dual action that's over the counter. And dual action has a combination of ibuprofen and Tylenol. And that combination can work very, very well for most discomfort that's dental related. And now I'm not talking about like an emergency abscess on a tooth. That becomes a whole different situation. But I'm just talking about like your average discomfort dentally when maybe there's a minor problem. So dual action is a pretty good one that's over the counter. But yeah, besides that, I don't feel that's where my presentation ends, I think. Because beyond that, dentistry, like the diagnosis of problems with dentistry can get so complex. Teeth are small things, small boxes with small nerves on the inside of them that pack a heavy punch if they're hurting. And so the whole diagnosis in the field, I don't recommend, you know, teaching too much of that. And I don't recommend that we try to be dentists on ourselves or each other in like a modern way while we're in the field. That's why I really emphasize, get rid or fix questionable teeth now before they become a problem, and then do your best to maintain that. I don't have a handout for the presentation I just gave, but I'm going to hold up my outline to the screen in just a moment here. I'll hold it up for 3 seconds, and then you can always hit pause on the recording or take a screenshot or something. So here it goes. Maybe. And that's just very simple, but of course you could take a screenshot and zoom in. And that's just generally what I covered. And I think that's all I have for right now, but I'd be happy to take questions if there's anything. I can't hear you, Debbie. Debbie, you might be muted.
And I unmuted and I was still muted. So there, sorry about that. Thank you, Andre. Jeez. So yeah, I didn't know if those were questions for you, Andres. Aaron was typing some things. I said Shaun is answering in chat. Sandra, you have a question for Andres?
Yes, two things. Have you read the book When There Is No Dentist? And if so, is it any good? The second thing is, if you've ever seen the movie Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman, you know that oil of clove comes in handy. And I could vouch for that. It's good for pain. Of course, it masks an underlying problem you got to eventually take care of. But oil of clove for dental pain works real well.
Sure. Thank you for that. The first question was, do I have the book, or have I read the book Where There Is No Dentist? I own that book. I find it pretty interesting. I think it's decently good as like a kind of like a connection between the dental professional and the lay person. You've heard that book series like such and such for dummies, the weather for dummies, astronomy for dummies, that kind of thing. It almost acts like that, like a dentistry for dummies or something like that, because it kind of helps consolidate a lot of the information in dentistry to the layperson and just kind of puts things into perspective, like of what is a wide, big field into kind of like small chunks that are more digestible. So I kind of like the book for general knowledge and for a few tips and tricks. But again, I think the book assumes that there's still going to be like a clinic facility, a decent amount of armamentarium, just no actual dentist. You know what I mean? So, so again, when it comes to the go bag, it's like, how big is your go bag? Is your go bag the size of a medical room? Because you can't run with that. And my go bag is, something that fits on my back, and I can walk many miles in. So I think it would be an excellent read just for you to improve your dental IQ in general. Not you specifically, but you, everybody. That's why I have it. I think it's a good book. And then as far as oil of clove, yeah, that's why I love that you said that obviously this just like helps to mask an underlying problem that needs fixing anyway, because that's exactly it. And I don't have personal experience with oil of clove. I have learned that yes, it's very helpful for soothing dental symptoms. So is zinc oxide eugenol. So because of the eugenol. But that's why kind of at the end of my outline, I said, and this is probably where I'm going to stop before I get to diving deep into the, all the myriad holes of diagnosis and of treatment with dentistry, because I don't really think that fits into the go bag. So yeah, there's things out there that can help soothe. But again, how long are you going to be with your go bag? I don't know, the combat medic carries a decent amount of dental stuff on them, like intermediate restorative material, IRM, which was created in the military. And so yeah, so there's like things that can be used in a bind and a pinch as kind of like temporary fixes, but definitely they're temporary fixes. They're not a diagnosis. They're not going to treat an underlying problem. That's why I really say just like either fix or get rid of any questionable teeth right now, any problematic teeth, and then do your best to stay problem free after that.
Great. Any other questions? Andre, thank you so much. And I hope the birthday party was a big hit. And happy birthday to your little one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And it was a big hit and she loved it.
Excellent. Excellent. Glad to hear it. Okay, so the next portion, what the way we're going to do this is we've asked, like Alissa was saying, having a whole bunch of stuff, if we've never used it, it's a crapshoot. If it's going to be useful, if it's going to be functional, if we know how to use it, if it's the best one to have. So what we've asked is that, the people participating, bring some of, your favorite ideas, the things you've worked with. If you've tested out something and you have a favorite, or just, if it's a name brand, that's great. And if not, just, the type of thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to round robin this. So if you have something to share, I'll ask you to do the same thing in reactions. Raise your hand and I'll call on you and I'll ask you to only share one item. So if you came with 10 things, you just have to pick one to start. And then we'll go to the next person. And then you can raise your hand again and get back at the end of the line. And then we'll keep going. So that we hear a lot of voices. And if yours is a duplicate, don't unraise your hand, but say, okay, so-and-so just spoke to that. And I agree. This is why that for me, that's the best one I found for that. Okay. So, obviously we want to get through as much as we can. We don't have to end right on time, but if we can keep these kind of brief and, but share your information. Oh, and the other thing I'd like to ask is, if you would, when you're finished presenting, especially if it's a name brand or you have a website, if you will type that into the chat, say, so this is a water bottle, here's the brand. And if you have a website, for where you want to say you got it, if you don't have to, because sometimes there's a lot of places you could get it. But if that does apply, then do that. And like I said, you'll all get a copy of the chat. And that way you'll have documentation of, instead of trying to say, what did he say? What was that brand again? So I see the first one was Tom Foote. You're on, sir.
Unmute. Okay, good. Very simple. Thank you. These are very wonderful presentations. I just appreciate it a lot. One thing I'd like to share is carry a little medical go bag with you everywhere you go. If you're at home, you have one in your, in your house. If you're in your car, you have one in your car. If you're taking a walk for an hour with the dog, take a tiny one, take a little one. I use mine, unfortunately, more often than I would not. Thank you. That's it.
Great. Thanks. Sam Camper, is that a hand raise? You happen to be in my top 5.
All right.
Okay.
First one, iron lace, unbreakable laces.
We can't see it. If you were holding that up.
There we go. Can you see that?
There we go. Yep.
You can get them on Amazon. They also work good for a cord for a bow drill. I've never worn one out yet. So they come in all different sizes. Okay, there's my first one.
Great. And if you'll type that into the chat, that'll be good. I don't see a hand raise, so I'm going to do one. because this one is really important. Now, this one is big, and this is from my car, so I haven't even taken the thing off. The one I have in my go bag backpack is a 32 ounce. This is 64. But I know a lot of people use Nalgene bottles. The reason this one and the brand name is Clean Canteen, both of them with a K. The reason this one is better is it's 100% stainless steel. So if you've ever been somewhere very cold, like I have, and your water freezes in all your fire retardant containers, you have absolutely no way to get your water out. If you carry your water in a single, this is also single walled, it's not insulated. So I can put water, I can have water in here. It could be a chunk of ice, which you shouldn't fill it all the way, obviously. But then I can take this, the only plastic part, that's why I like this brand. The only plastic part is in the lid. There's no rubber or anything along the top. So you can put this on the fire and melt your water. You can also use it to boil water. And because it's wide mouth, you can use it for cooking in a pinch as well. So it's called Quick Clean. I'm sorry, why do I keep saying that? It's Clean Canteen. It's a great brand. And I think I got this off of Amazon. So more people, I know you have things. Go ahead, Sam.
This in this pack is a longbow survival archery system. So I'll type it in a second. It's just got a Velcro. You take that loose, you flop both the arms out, and you string it. I would get 2 strings. It doesn't have a shelf. They have some of these little things that you can use for a shelf, but I found that if you just take that Velcro and I rolled up a little piece of leather and strapped it to the side, that makes a good shelf. And it's very light. I think it's 2.4 pounds for a 60-inch longbow. And get an extra string.
Not seeing another hand raised. You know, you don't have to have show and tell. You could just tell us about something you have. But I know water straws are an important topic, and I've tried out a bunch of them. And this is my favorite. It's from Practical Survival. It's emergency water straw. The things I like about this one is you can see it's a little longer than some. So if you're doing direct out of a puddle, it's not like you have to have your face, you know, almost practically in the puddle. The end cap, you can screw it onto a standard bottle. I don't carry standard bottles, but you could. So you could fill if you have a twist top bottle, or you find one in the woods, you could fill it and use this to create a filter. Otherwise, you just put it directly into the water, and then you just sip through it. This, some of them, if you've tried them, to get the water through is really difficult. You feel like you're going to suck your brain out trying to get anything to come through. But this one goes through very quickly, very easily. When you're finished, I usually just lift it up, continue to suck out the water, and then I leave the end caps off so it has a chance to dry out. So you're not getting, slimy water in there. And it, for this type of thing, it's 1,100 gallons, which is probably more than 5 years for one person worth of water that you need. So it's not something that's only going to last you a few months. And it's one of these 99.99% of all, microorganisms, bacteria, all the things that we want to filter out. I don't know that any of them really do chemicals, but it certainly is going to handle most of the natural kinds of things that we would come across in water supplies. So that's Practical Survival water straw is my favorite. And if other people have other favorites, you know, like I say, don't hesitate to share. Other people.
Debbie, I had something that came up that I would love to share. And this
Great.
is in having, you know, our age, our body constrictions, different things. And one of the things that I've been noticing as just moving through the tracker community is that not a lot of people can carry stuff on their back. And if they can, by the time they put all this stuff in a bag, it's way too heavy. So if we were to track some of the events that have happened, most of the time, Tom was saying that circumstances happen regionally. And if it's happening in one region, it may not be happening in another region. And so I started playing with the idea of creating a trailer and creating a place in my house where I had certain things, where I have extra stuff on hand, as opposed to it just being in a bag that goes on my back. And so after field testing a lot of this stuff that I have, nothing goes in my bag unless it has multiple uses. If I have field tested it, I take it out, I play with it, I try it. And if it doesn't work, it gets scrapped and something else goes in my bag. Also, seasonal go bags. So what it should be in your bag for the winter, it should not be in your bag for the summer, and kind of vice versa. So constantly pulling your bag out and thinking about what season is it, what things, you know, do I put in a bin for later that I can just like recycle back through my bag, or maybe having 2 or 3 bags. I have a winter bag, a summer bag, a bag that's used just for medical, and that goes in either bag or can be transferred over. But also using, I put in the chat, I have 5 areas of cache. I have what's on my body at all times. I have what's on my back. I have what's in my car. I have what's in my house, and I have what I've cached at an external location that's not in my region. So that if I needed to go and leave the region that I'm in, I have to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west, and a cache in those locations, so that I know that when I pull up, I'm not being a burden or a hardship on the people that are in that region, that I have already outfitted myself and my family with what I need when I go to them. And that helps. So that's just something that was in my heart that I wanted to share, is that don't let go bags scare you. Make go bags work for you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Andres.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm being naughty because I'm walking around in a dark house, even though it was my turn. You caught me. And so I really like the hand saws, and I've experimented with a lot of different hand saws to like just help with cutting wood. And honestly, the best one that I found that's lightweight and small, but like really durable and doesn't seem to break on me, is the brand is BAHCO. So it's kind of really used, but there it is, kind of like on the blade, BAHCO. Honestly, I think I bought it on Amazon. It's a Baco hand saw. And so they're not that big, they're not that heavy, but they're sturdy. And then the press button, the press button and like just to open the blade is easy. This joint tends to like hyperextend and break on so many brands out there, and this one just doesn't. And I own like 3 of these, and I've beat them all up a lot, and none of them have broken on me. And so it's never that big, it's never that heavy. The joint is super sturdy. It never hyperextends or gets wobbly on me. I use them a crap ton. I've cut a lot of wood. So it's one of those go bag items that honestly like has always frustrated me, and I've always thought is kind of a pain in the butt, and I never like any other products out there that are related to this. And then I found these Bacos, BAHCO, and I'll type it in the chat. And I was finally like, oh, cool. Finally, one of these that I actually do like. So I tend to carry 3 steel tools in the go bag: a knife, a small hand axe that's like 1.5 pounds or less, in weight in one of these saws. And this saw was always like the weak point, you know, like the one that I never liked. But then I finally found these Bakos, so that's cool.
Excellent. Yeah, that's one where there is such a range of really poor quality saws out there, and it's, you know, and it's my soapbox thing. I mean, it's the one thing I've never found anything that can replace it in nature. You know, I've tried different things and it doesn't exist. Not that functions in the same way as a modern saw. So carrying a handsaw like that or some form of saw, you know, is really, I think, important. While we're waiting for someone else to get brave and raise their hand, I'll share another one. And this, you know, and I hear that a lot from people about not, you know, like the seasonal thing. But for me, the reality is, you know, the one we take out in the summer, we might still be using in the winter. So there's a couple things, and I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying have a few things in your all the time bag that is always going to be in there. And one of them for me is silk, 100% silk long johns. They pack incredibly small. It's incredibly thin and light. And I have been using my active pair, not the pair that, you know, and tops and bottoms, don't just do one or the other, get both. The one I have, I bought from REI literally 40 plus years ago, and I've used them like a lot, and they are still strong. So it's incredibly strong. And for the weight and size, the amount of warmth that you can capture with silk long johns is really important. And there's probably a lot of places, if you're not an REI member, you know, to where you can get, but I would go for the 100% silk if you can get it. Okay, next one, Eric.
Hi, I want to address something. People ask about nuclear stuff and how do you know if you have nuclear radiation? There's something called the Nuke Alert. I don't know if you can see that. So this is pretty small. It can go on a keychain, and this chirps if it detects nuclear radiation. You can see it's, you know, in my fingers, it's pretty small. But if you carry one of these things, if there's some kind of nuclear release or something, you will know, and then you'll know when you're in a safe area when it stops making noise. So, you know, people who are concerned about nuclear radiation, I would recommend you get one of these things, the Nuke Alert. And another thing, digging is very important, and you can't carry a big shovel. What I carry is, this is a landscaping nail. It's large, it's heavy, but I tend to end up in a lot of mountainous areas where the ground is really hard and rocky. And if you have a plastic hand trowel, it'll break in no time. This thing here, you just scavenge a rock and you hit with a rock, and you can dig through pretty much anything. You can punch holes through pretty much anything. And if you want to get roots or whatever in hard ground, this is very portable. It's not light. I mean, it's heavy, but you know, it's one of the things that I feel is, you know, you don't want to skimp on a digging tool. And this here is a great digging tool. It doesn't take up a lot of room, but it is heavy because it's metal. So that's what I had to share.
Eric, what is that called again?
It's a landscaping nail. It looks like a big common nail.
Okay, landscaping nail.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a ruler handy, but it's several inches long. My wife is actually going to get a ruler so I can measure this thing. Thank you. So use this to anchor stuff in the ground, you know, for landscaping stuff. So this is, it's 10 inches long. Thank you. So it's basically a 10-inch common nail. So it's great for digging. You know, don't carry a rock with you. Just scavenge a rock and then beat on the end.
Yeah, it may be heavy, but I bet it's less than a shovel. So
yeah, a metal shovel.
Great.
Anyway, yeah.
So Kathleen, you have, oh, you either want to ask or share, Kathleen? people wrote in the chat that Kathleen wanted.
Here we go. Yeah, I mentioned something that I wanted for Andre to hear about dental, and it was in the chat, and that is that I have had dental problems all my adult life, abscess teeth, and I have used Golden Seal capsules and staved off an abscess for 2 years, and another tooth that needs work, and I put in Golden Seal capsules at night. The inflammation reduces, it goes away. So if people are desperate, and also I've gotten rid of staph infection with Golden Seal. So it's a very powerful capsule to have with you. I have one more thing, and since I've been raising my hand, but apparently it hasn't been seen, can I show you the other tool that nobody has mentioned?
Absolutely.
And I don't know if there's a way to make this more full screen. I don't know if you can see me hold this up. I'm seeing a little tiny image of myself in the upper right-hand corner. Can you
Yeah,
see?
you're bigger for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been on lots of Zoom calls, but let's see. This is called a silcock. Are any of you familiar with this tool? And it disappeared. I don't know why. It's
I think it's something with the background.
it goes 4 directions. You can get a 2-pack on Amazon. They're not real expensive. It's highly illegal to use under normal circumstances. But what it is for, Alissa, what it is for is in extreme emergency. Your water straw won't do you any good if you don't have water. This is a way to get city water while it's still available. You go to the outside of any public building, and the silcock will attach to the outside water location that you can't get into without the silcock tool. There it is. It's got a hole on the end. Are you familiar with those? Are you familiar, Debbie? Can you hear?
Nope, not. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a new one to me. Alyssa was nodding her head, but
So I carry one in the glove compartment of my vehicle, and the other one would go in my go bag. It's a good thing to have.
cool. And Kathleen, if you'll put that in the chat, please, because people are asking how to spell that. So if you can type that into the chat, that would be really helpful.
I'll do that, and I'll mute myself now.
Okay, I got another one while we're waiting. Oh, Sam, you go before me.
All right, just one more. Tom had said in the past that a 22 would kill a deer, and it might be a good thing to take. If this, it's really hard to see, but it's called a Chiapa Little Badger TDX. It weighs 2.5 pounds. It's a single shot. It breaks down, and you load one at a time. And it also has a threaded barrel so that you can put a suppressor on it. And these things are called catch 22s. You can put 50 rounds of 22 ammunition in those. And there's like 10 holes with 5 shots in each hole. That way you're not carrying those cheap plastic things. But it's really good. I've only shot it twice, but it was at 33 and 50 feet, and I hit the bullseye both times. So for a ground blind, you know, you're going to be able to get that close.
Excellent. Thanks, Sam. Anybody? Is it a problem if you're raising your hand, physically? I only have the first 6 people, so it's hard to see you do that. So if I'm not calling on you, type in the chat or get down to that little react button and do that hand raise. But while I'm waiting for another person, I'll do my other one, a couple of years ago, and it kind of cracked me up, but I saw these on Facebook, of all places, Facebook ads, but they were these beautiful llama and alpaca ponchos. And it was before Christmas, and they had the special buy two, get one free. And so I thought, well, Kathy and I can use one. I'm going to get one for Dorothy, my sister. And, it's perfect to throw over. So I ordered them. And the llama is nice. It's as good as any other wool, but what I discovered is the alpaca is actually miracle fiber. I mean, it is absolutely incredible, because it's so much thinner than any of the sheep or llama wool, any of those kinds of things. It's along the lines like cashmere, if you've had, cashmere clothing or whatnot. But the alpaca has incredible warmth capturing abilities, and it's very, very soft. So after buying the ponchos and discovering the alpaca bit, I've got blankets, I've got things. The company I'll write down is called Equilama. It's because it's from Ecuador. And I really like it because, fair trade, and they have it's homespun by local women there. And they get incredibly fast, like free shipping from Ecuador, and you have it within a week. Now, they're not inexpensive. So I would say these guys frequently do buy two, get one free things. I would definitely look for those kind of sales, unless you just need one and then you just go pay full price for one. But they have blankets, they have ponchos, they have a lot of things. The only thing I wouldn't recommend are their socks. The socks are too loosely, they're beautiful wool and they're warm, but they're too loosely woven. And so they just don't hold their shape. There's another company, but I don't have as much experience. It's called Paca, that also does alpaca clothing, a lot of different things. Once I've had some more field work time in that, I'll share if I think it's worth it. And they also sell socks, but theirs are 70% alpaca and 30% synthetic fibers, which, especially for something like the socks, might make that better. So, especially if you have a car bag, having blankets for your car bag, you might not want to pack a full size blanket, but those ponchos, if you have a poncho, it throws over the top of whatever you're wearing. It can be used as a blanket, so something like that. And once they roll up, they're not very big. So for the warmth ratio, I would definitely recommend that. Other people, anybody else? Or are we at the end of our sharing? Which is fine. I mean, boy,
Debbie, I had one real quick.
Oh, okay. Great. Chris, go, and then Raphael, we'll get you next. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of something you said about the silk long johns. Silk is another wonder fiber. It's a natural fiber, and not only does it keep you warm in the winter, but it keeps you cooler than a regular cotton t-shirt does in the summertime. So if you can find silk shirts, I don't have a particular brand. I'm still trying to find one, because short sleeve, they don't do as much as they do for long sleeve, for long john type stuff. But they're real good. I've got some shirts that I've gotten from the Renaissance Festival, and I used to go to that all the time. And it's amazing that even though these are weird shirts that have sleeves that you can do different things with, so you can kind of make it a short sleeve shirt and then a long sleeve shirt. And they're really good because, like I said, they do a really good job of keeping you warmer in cooler weather and cooler and warmer weather. It's kind of amazing. And you can be wearing the same shirt, and just by those shirts for the Renaissance Festival, just by changing them from short sleeve version to long sleeve version, you can wear the same shirt all day with, tremendous weather changes. So, it's a good fiber out there, and it's incredibly strong. Like you said, wears like iron.
Great, thank you. And I saw in notes, they go by too fast. I think it was Sandra typed in that she has 100% silk sock liners. So I think it was Shaun that was mentioning sock liners, and man, that makes perfect sense that silk would be an excellent sock liner too. Cool, excellent. This is good. Raphael, you're on, sir.
Yeah, hi. So one of the tools I would take with me would be like just a basic fishing line and some hooks. Um, always when we make, I'm in Bolivia, so always when we go to the jungle for like a week or something like that, and we have to move every day. Just in the night, we during the day we harvest some maggots, and in the evening, we just go to the river and we fish some catfish, and it's like enough food for one day, and it's like just like the hooks and the line. It's lightweight and it can be very useful for food procuration, I would say.
Great, excellent. Yes, very good point. Anyone else? Well, folks, I really want to thank you all for everything, our presenters especially, but also, everybody for your great questions for them, and for those who shared items for their go bags. I think we all have walked away with probably at least a few ideas of changes or things we can add and things that we could use in our go bags. And now what all we need to do is to make a commitment to actually doing this. And, unless you're, completely financially sound and not having to worry about it, this is something that might take time. So, taking a look at these things, assessing what you have, what you want to add, if you need to be saving up money to get, to add some things, and prioritizing, because we just never know. You look at the news, how many people in Texas, had to flee. I know some, way too many didn't have opportunity to flee, but a lot of them did. Would you be ready right this minute with your go bag? So making that commitment, not just to yourself, but to your families, your friends, and those, who are depending on you for this. So really want to thank everyone. Yeah, somebody's going to go buy lotto tickets. She said, there we go. And then we'll all have an opportunity, yeah, if we can win some money, we can have great go bags. So again, our thanks. I want to let you know next month we are not going to have a call. We found that August, so many people are vacationing or enjoying their time outside or harvesting their home gardens that, it's just a good month for all of us to take a breath and not and not have a call next month, but we will be back in September, and I hope you'll join us. And I know I said that, I think I said Lorena was going to do the closing, but she works really darn early and wasn't feeling well. So I'm going to do the closing for us today. So if you can just relax, close your eyes, and see yourself in grandfather's camp. And if you haven't been there, just kind of feel the rest of us entering in there with the central fire ring, and the direction poles, the sand, with the pine needles dropping on it, all the new green growth that's so vibrant and beautiful after the fire, all the new life, all the change and transformation. And I know when we talk about go bags, people can get worried. It's like, oh, I'm not ready for this, or, what am I going to do? What's happening in the world? There can be so much fear and worry. But take a moment and look at the vision grandfather gave us. Take a moment to feel what it's like for all of us when we're in the woods. That peace, that joy, that connection, that touching Mother Earth. We've been given a gift. We've been given a gift of warning. We've been given a gift of tools and skills, both physical and spiritual. We've been given a community. We can make a tremendous difference in the world. So all our work in preparation, whether it's practicing the skills that we learned from Tom, or whether it's taking care of the basics, like getting our go bags ready. All of that is part of our commitment to this vision, to the future, and to the children of the earth. Shuna. So thank you once again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and hopefully we'll see you back in September. Good night.